Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast, the show where we dive into the real stories behind entrepreneurship, the highs, the lows, and the lessons learned along the way. I'm your host, Mike Conrad, and today I have a truly inspiring guest joining us. Stephanie Utterback is the founder and CEO of Epic BNB, a company that has carved out a unique space in the short-term rental industry. From navigating the challenges of entrepreneurship to building a brand that stands out in a very competitive market, Stephanie has seen it all. On this episode, she takes us behind the scenes of her entrepreneurial journey, what inspired her to start Epic BNB, the obstacles, and there were many, that she's had to overcome, and the pivotal moments that shaped her success. We'll talk about the realities of running a business in the short-term rental space and how to turn setbacks into stepping stones, and the advice she has for aspiring and current entrepreneurs looking to make their mark. If you've ever considered diving into the world of short-term rentals or wonder what it takes to build a thriving business from the ground up, you won't want to miss this conversation. And this conversation begins right now. You know, the disadvantage of being a host on the show is that little jingle at the end, that little 5-second stinger just sticks in my head all day long. So
my gosh.
Because I tend to record
that.
like 3 or 4 a day, and then not record anything for a while. And so it's in there. Hi, Stephanie. Good to see you.
Hey, Mike. It's so good to see you. Been a long time.
It has. Just for full disclosure to my audience, your episode number 16, the 15 guests that I've had prior to you, I have never met. One of them I kind of knew loosely through my industry, but I'd never actually physically saw them. You and I have known each other for a very long time. In fact, I met you when you were a young girl. You were our neighbor.
I think I was 10, so that would be 27 years ago.
Wow. Well, you're still at that age where you admit your age, right? Because I think at some point, you're just 37 forever, right? You know, you could be 52 and you'll claim 37. That seems to be the case. So it is kind of a mind game here to, be sitting with, what we would affectionately call you in the past as Little Steph. Because we had 2 Stephanies in our life. So you were Little Steph. And now all of a sudden it's like Big Steph, big entrepreneur, got a great business going. So this is really cool that I'm able to talk to you particularly about this. So what inspired you to go off on your own and to specifically start Epic BNB? But in the past, you were working at. I know you worked at Starbucks for a very long time.
Yeah.
Our favorite barista. And I think you managed the store, so you had a little bit of business experience from a management standpoint. But what made you take the leap of a paycheck every week or two and someone else worrying about all the things now today you worry about? What made you, jump in, as I like to say, jump into the deep end of the cold pool?
Yeah, I mean, as you know this, you can only plan life so much. You can only be, have only certain, you cannot have aspirations, but I had no idea I'd end up here today talking to Mike, right? Look, there must have been some sort of responsibility in me, even as a young girl, because we were scuba diving buddies and you trusted me to be your scuba diving buddy, just so everybody knows, right? I was 12, right? And so you relied on me to, if something happened under there, I'd help you with that BC tank and just make sure that you could breathe. So
my gosh, I'd forgotten about that.
Just because you brought up how long you've known me, I just know that that's we were scuba diving buddies.
That's right.
Abby, your wife, she didn't want to scuba dive, so
she was the smart one. She's like, hell no, I'm not going in the ocean. Yeah.
Yeah. And so entrepreneurship. Kind of runs in my family-ish a little bit. Obviously, my dad, he moved here from France like 47 years ago with my mom. And I guess and my brother Adrian has his own business. He's 6 years older, so he's ahead of me. And he had a business. And I think just seeing the way that the likes that my parents kind of led and learning from their stories and just how brave they were just coming to the United States 40 something years ago, not speaking English, you know, with all these different jobs they did. For me, it was like, it didn't seem, it seemed a little bit scary, but also it's like, oh, if they could build a life here with the minimal money they had, like, I really think that nothing is impossible. So I think really in my personal journey with Epic BNB, why I started this, well, I was, like you mentioned, I was at Starbucks for a really long time. It was kind of my not first really big job, but it's just, I got it right out of high school to get me through college. And, but let's just start even before that. Entrepreneurially, in high school, I learned how to sew at a really young age. I think I was like maybe 10. I took sewing classes at House of Fabrics when that was, I don't even think that's around anymore. I don't know if you remember I used to sew like my Halloween outfits and my dresses. I don't know if you remember that.
It's all coming back to me. Yeah, this is like a therapy session. All these repressed memories are coming back. Yeah.
So I must have had a spirit in me because I was illegally, I didn't know it. In high school, I made these really cool purses, like these book bags. And I remember I made my own ones. And then these kids were like, oh, that's really cool. And so I would sell them at $20 a pop in high school. And I don't think I ever got caught. I think somebody told me, well, you can get in trouble. So that's the thing about me.
No business license, no taxes. All that.
Exactly. Yeah,
Living
the government
on the edge.
didn't like that this 14-year-old was making bags and selling. No, I never got in trouble, but I am definitely a rule follower. Like, I like to be compliant. So when I found out I wasn't really allowed to be selling things at school, I stopped. Then over time, the band boyfriends, I would create merch for their band, and then I would split the costs with them. It's nice. I just like making it. So these little I guess like foreshadowing that I didn't know back then that maybe I might have a business one day. And then I don't know if you remember, I was teaching swim lessons in my parents' backyard back in Chino Hills. So it all kind of like, I guess I had it in me potentially. And then Starbucks is really where I learned, that I went to school for design. I'm very much a creative. Like, that was like my first love is creative, music, art, design, all that type of thing. But it wasn't really till I got the job at Starbucks. I moved up pretty quickly. I was a really young boss. I was a terrible boss. I had leadership qualities, but didn't know yet how to hone in.
By the way, entrepreneurs are the worst bosses in the world. Because if you discovered that at a young age, I discovered it after I couldn't figure out why employees couldn't work with me for very long.
I mean, it's such a journey. Yeah, it's a whole. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. But that's Starbucks is really where I learned my business acumen. I didn't go to business school. I went to design school, but Starbucks is what I quickly became a manager, and a manager at Starbucks, they're responsible to learn how to read and manage a P&L. Which I didn't know anything about that until I, worked at Starbucks and was a manager and opening new stores. And I had to report to a district manager on, hey, are you meeting your sales? What's your turnover like as far as your employees? If you have a high turnover, you're not very good at your job, right? And so I learned all these metrics that were, was very eye-opening. Inventories, supply, reviews, guest satisfaction, labor percentages, my schedule had to be within a 1% late. I couldn't go, I couldn't overstaff, understaff. And so I really learned a lot. And I would actually recommend, Starbucks is a great first job if you're young and you want to think about starting your business one day. I think you can learn so much. Just look at them. I mean, they're so successful. They're well-oiled machine.
Do you know how many business people I've talked to that really didn't understand a P&L or an income statement or a cash flow projection until it was almost too late? And I'm included in that. I'm one of those that didn't understand it. I had a very cursory understanding of, to me, the P&L had two numbers on it: total income and gross, and maybe three net. But that's not real. That's, there's way more information on a balance sheet and all of that. Yeah. But I didn't learn to read financials until I was pretty much out of money. You came in knowing that, which is quite a blessing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had been exposed to it. I wasn't great at it.
It wasn't unfamiliar to you.
It wasn't unfamiliar. Right. Yeah. And so I was at Starbucks for almost 10 years. I actually, really loved it. But I was really young. I think I was 22-ish when I was a manager for years. I was a very young manager. And but I was like, I was living paycheck to paycheck. I found out later on that I was like the lowest paid manager. I'd been there for the longest, but I don't know how to negotiate. I was just a young girl, and I didn't have any mentors. I didn't have any, even my bosses. I had great bosses, but they were like, hey, you can negotiate this. You can really, nobody taught me. So I had to learn the hard way. And, I got taken advantage of just being young and not knowing how to stick up for myself. And so I was just basically at a point like, I just can't, I can't save, right? It just wasn't able, even as a manager, and I wasn't living large or anything like that. I just was like, I got to figure something out. So I had accrued like 5 or 6 weeks paid vacation. So I made sure to get my store. My plan was I'm going to get my store in a really great spot. I'm going to take my 5 to 6 week vacation all in one chunk. When I get back, I'm quitting. Like that's what and I'm going to hand it over though to somebody else because I don't want to be, I know that I wanted to do my own thing. I don't know what it was, but I'm like, I'm not going to do Starbucks for life. And I don't judge anybody that does that because shoot, I can always fall back on that and kill it. I'll run another store. I still have dreams about it, but actual dreams, not like goals. Like I dream about my time at Starbucks. But so I went to Europe by myself. I did a backpacking trip. That was crazy. Lots of other lessons I learned about myself there, just about, just grit and just pushing through and challenges. And oh man, that was a crazy time.
Which will come in very handy later in your story. Yes.
Yes, it does. So yeah. And then I just essentially just worked a couple in between jobs between, Starbucks. And then when I started Epic BNB, or just, it was a different name at the time, but I really, the last thing was I worked for this, he called himself a serial entrepreneur. He really was. He actually had a lot of businesses, but his the most successful one. And I was an executive assistant. So I was helping manage his car dealership. I was helping manage his new menswear line. What else did he have? Bunch of things. And then he was part of real estate, which, that's the one that made a lot of money. And he also had a couple of his own Airbnb, right? And that's how I kind of learned that, that's a cool thing. So I managed everything. I managed Airbnbs, his car dealership, his menswear, the marketing for his real estate team. It was quite a lot, but I learned a ton. And the whole Airbnb thing, I saw the money he was making. This was back in like 2014. And I was like, damn, like this thing is really, really cool. And I'm like living paycheck to paycheck. Yeah. I was like, oh my goodness. And I learned a lot about hospitality at Starbucks. They're all about like, they're not just customers, right? Like these are, this is like serving through the eyes of humanity. And Starbucks is really good about that. And so it's really about caring about people. So I love the whole hospitality aspect of it. And when I was managing these, I was like, wow, this has got me excited, right? At the time, I was renting a property in East Nashville that my parents owned. I was renting the front, and then there was also it was like a duplex. And I was telling my dad, and we were had a long-term renter back there. My parents were living in California at the time, and they put me in charge of finding that renter. And I was like, Mama, Papa, because they're French, as you know. But I was like, hey, so-and-so, Josh is going to be moving out soon in the back. I'm like, can I rent it out? Can I pay you the $700? And I would like to Airbnb it. And I would love to this might help me save money, right? I can take the profits. My dad will still to this day say that he didn't say this, but he definitely said no. And I went a whole other year with a long-term renter because he's like, no, you don't know what you're doing. I'm like, okay. So I wasn't able to do it. And for another year, I did learn more. And then I was like, I have to do this. Like, I'm going to do this.
Was he right? In hindsight, was he right? You weren't ready?
No,
or was he just being overprotective dad?
No, he just okay. Back then, nobody knew Airbnb was. So my dad basically was like, no, we're not going to do this. Just continue working for this other guy, and just like I'm not going to allow you to do that. Just find another renter. So I did. Fast forward, another year. At this time, I meet my now husband. He was my boyfriend at the time. And he moved in with me. My parents loved him. We were together. Maybe it took Matt, my husband, maybe it took me meeting him to be like, okay, we can do this. So after a year, we were able to convert the back house in East Nashville that we were renting to an Airbnb. We had our old college furniture heated, and it was nothing to what Airbnb is today, but it was still really, really nice. And We booked really, really fast. We were the cleaners. We did everything. Like we did hire out. We did everything ourselves and learned the ins and outs. At the same time, I was still working for my boss, and I was around a bunch of other real estate professionals because I was doing marketing for his real estate team, and so I'm just talking shop with these big realtors who have these really nice Airbnbs, and they weren't really performing, and we had this tiny little back house in East Nashville. It was killing it. It was like 5 stars, excellent service, great reviews. It wasn't anything super fancy. We just cared. And then so these other realtors were like, wow, like, well, my Airbnb is not doing that great. Like, would you consider managing it? And that's when I was like, oh, okay, like I can actually do this as a business. And so that's really what started it. And I actually do remember this moment in time before anybody even asked me to manage their Airbnbs. I remember actually cleaning our own. I was making the bed and I was just having the best day ever. I'm like, I could do this. Like I could really, like I actually enjoyed what I was doing and like hosting people and making it all nice and neat and just guests checking in and leaving a review. And I don't know. I like taking care of people and making them happy. And that's just kind of that's basically what started off like the idea. And then I eventually, I quit the executive assistant position working for this guy managing his Airbnbs. I just kind of went off on my own and I asked my husband, we were again dating at the time. I was like, hey, like, can I ask to for you to float us for a little bit? Because we were both just dating or renting together. And he was making pretty good money as a road musician. And he's like, yeah, I got you, babe. I could float you for a little bit. And then thanks to him for floating me, it really allowed me to, it took about a year before I could really start, recontributing to what we were doing. So yeah, that's kind of what started it. I hope that answers that question.
Does it, looking back now with some perspective, does it seem like there was a plan, there was a grand plan, like you were destined to do this? And I say that because although you didn't go to business school, you went to design school, you kind of did go to business school in kind of the school of life way. So yeah. You had immigrant parents, as did I. You and I share that in common. And I think the first generation children of immigrant parents probably are more entrepreneurial on average than than third, fourth, fifth generation. For reasons I don't understand.
Right.
But so you had this statistical advantage of becoming an entrepreneur, or likelihood, I should say, of becoming an entrepreneur, because you were first generation. And your father, although he did dabble a little bit in his own business for a short time, but he was very entrepreneurial within his company. Mm-hmm. Your father was a baker, and he basically ran the bakery like it was his own. And they just stood back and let him, bake bread. They made money. He made money. He ran it like it was his own. So he was very entrepreneurial. So you had that experience. And then you had the corporate experience at Starbucks that taught you the mechanics of certain parts of business, income statements and labor projections and inventory control and all of that. And then you got exposed to Airbnb from a Airbnb site provider, not to start a business. You were actually doing it. It just seems like the stars kind of lined up, like the business, I always refer to on the show as the business gods. And I mean that metaphorically. Yeah. It's like the business gods had a plan for you. So they sent you to school and you didn't know it at the time, that would be your ultimate destination, or at least your interim destination. Who knows where you're going to end up. But does it appear like that now? Does it all kind of make sense now? Does it seem like building blocks were falling into place?
Yeah, I think that's just, again, I didn't think I'd be here, right? And again, who knows where we will end up 5 years from now. But yeah, definitely in hindsight, you can definitely connect those dots and make that story, right? But I do also think there is something, I was thinking about this, and I'm glad that you brought it up about, first generation, from immigrants that moved here. And I don't know the metrics. I don't know if that's measurable. Is that a measurable thing that that?
I don't know. It just seems in my way. I think it's more anecdotal to me than statistical, but certainly I have that impression.
And that's how I feel. That's how I feel too. And I think, so You're right on my dad. So the thing about my dad is, even though, in the end, he's retired now, but he worked for somebody else. He treated that bakery as if it were his own. He really cared about people. He just cared. And he always taught me about integrity. And whatever you do, have integrity, right? And so I think, yes, maybe the stars aligned, but I think in everything that I did, I always took it seriously. I always did the best that I could, and I always really try to consider others around me and make sure that I care. And that's caring, is considering other people in every decision that you make. How is this going to affect so-and-so? How's it going to affect your client, your guests, your employees? And so, potentially, but I don't believe in, well, there's no belief or not. I think that things do happen for a reason. I think it's, some people take the opportunities and some people don't. And I really really believe that it just depends on the person, right? And some people run away from opportunity, or they get afraid and they just like, oh, this is just too overwhelming and scary because it's unknown. And then potentially because of the influences I had from my parents, who were I saw bravery like from a young age, potentially because I was exposed to that. Like, I'm like, we can figure this out. Everything's figure outable. And that's always the attitude that I've learned from my parents, is you just get back up and keep going, never give up. And potentially that played a role into where I'm at today.
Yeah, I think you and I share that part in common, watching our parents struggle as newly arrived immigrants, watching them, basically watching alchemy in progress, meaning, spinning straw into gold. And, they came with nothing, and your parents were the same way. I know them. And, my parents came with, 2 suitcases. That was it. No friends, no contact, very little money, no formal education. And they're like, here we are. So I think you and I both saw that, and that probably gave us a sense of a work ethic and a respect for what they managed to do, which came in handy later. So you're at the point now where you converted part of your home to an Airbnb. You're renting it out. You've had several years of experience assisting other entrepreneurs and running their businesses and doing all the administrative stuff and watching their back. Now you're ready to scale. And I say scale like it's a huge thing. You didn't go from 1 to 1,000 units, but you decided to go ahead and at some point acquire, start a business and start helping other people do it. So did you just start that kind of informally, like, hey, I'll give you a hand? Or did you just like get a business license and say, this is the model, this is the business plan? Or did it just kind of develop organically?
Well, I definitely didn't get a business license because I didn't know that I had to do that for like a year. So let's just say that I did for myself, right? And then I guess it kind of started really kind of consulting a little bit. Like, I didn't even charge. I didn't realize, I didn't even know what consulting was. I was like just talking to people about, they'd be like, hey, can you like take a look at my listing? What am I doing wrong? So it kind of started like organically like that. And then that's where when I was managing 3 other people's properties, it's like, okay, this is where I call it business opportunity. And when I really started getting serious about, okay, that's when I talked to Matt saying, hey, can I go ahead and start this business and you float us for a little bit? And yes, so I definitely did really start getting serious about compliance and making sure I got my license, because you need certain licenses to manage other, just compliance, right? Government, it's all a part of real estate. Got to get some licenses there, my VOS license and that type of thing. But I just kind of started that way. And then when you just talk about scaling this, when I started this, and kind of still is a little bit of the wild, wild west, but when I started managing other properties, it was not that common, especially in cities. I mean, there was like the mountain cities, probably Big Bear, right? Big Bear has a bunch of, in California, has a bunch of, and here we have Gatlinburg, which is similar to the Smoky Mountains. So actually when I got my license, the only place that offered licensure, like the classes, was like 3 hours away in the Smoky, because it wasn't the thing to manage short-term rentals. So back in the day, like 10 years ago, they're like, okay, if you're going to be in this business, you need to have an office where somebody comes and picks up the key to the rental. Like, it was just so like, this is not like, that's how they were teaching it back then.
Right.
Back then. So it's just completely different. And I knew, I'm like, this is not how it's going to work in Nashville. And scaling is really interesting in this industry because some investors, I'll say managers, they just see, oh, dollar signs, I can make a commission and I can scale this, and like X amount of properties is going to equal like $1 million. And like, right, you can look at it from just a financial, but unfortunately it's not that easy, because this is not your long-term property management. This is like a day-to-day, like we are literally a hotel. Our job is actually harder than managing a hotel, because we are spread across.
You don't own
miles.
the rooms. Yeah, if you owned a Hilton franchise, you own the building, you own the furniture, you control everything.
Right.
You're running someone else's hotel, and
there's that. But let's just talk about logistically. Whether I own it or not, logistically, what we do is so much harder, because the rooms in a hotel are all in one building. You can have like your one inventory room. It's actually like so easy to develop nice routines, right? And like, it's super easy.
Yeah, the maid doesn't have to get into a car and go to the next room, right?
Right. And the maid doesn't call you being like, oh my gosh, I got an accident from this property to the other. It doesn't happen often, but really, when it comes to hospitality, especially in this industry, is you really can't cut a lot of corners. You really, really, really can't, because people are paying you for an upgrade from their day-to-day lives. They're trying to escape their day-to-day lives, right? They're going to pay you to leave their homes that they're for the most part, pretty comfortable in. And they don't want to pay to be like more uncomfortable and like have like a shitty experience, right? Because and a lot of people, if I'm sure Airbnb, like there's the hotel people, there's people who are like hotel people. I'll never go to an Airbnb, because you never know what host you're going to get, right? So Airbnb can't have a bad rap. So scaling is a fine art. There are companies that have scaled. There's some really national companies that have thousands of listings, but their quality is just down. And because they have such volume, they don't really care, and I can't speak I don't know what every competitor does. I'm going from experience from my clients that have come to me from being managed by national companies and being like, my house is wrecked. I'm not getting any bookings. Our reviews are terrible. And so that's because they scaled too fast without, maintaining quality at each level. So that is something that I've kind of that's just how I run my business. I don't look at any other short-term rental management company and go, what are they doing? And potentially, maybe I would if we sucked. But because I care and because I have integrity at every step of the way, even when I started with one property to now we're going to be, at the end of this year, we'll be looking at 120-ish properties.
Wow.
Right now we're around 80. We're managing around 80 listings here in Nashville, but it's, you have to care every step of the way. And every team member, every team member has to care. So I don't know if that answers your questions about scaling, but it is an interesting. You can scale it in so many different ways, but just like any business, you got to make sure you maintain quality. Right. Because if you scale too fast, then you're going to lose it.
We've seen it in so many aspects of our life, in other businesses and restaurants and things like that grow, and then they go out of business. Jim Collins, the author Jim Collins, wrote a book several years ago called Good to Great, and he studied pairs of publicly traded companies, pairs of companies that had basically the same types of products in the same space, same customers. So one of them was Schick and Gillette, shaving stuff. Yeah. And then Kimberly Clark and some other paper company that made tissues and all of that. And he determined which one of the pairs in their space did way better than the other. And then he took all the winning pairs, the winning half of the pairs, and determined what did they have in common. And all the less successful half of the pairs, what do they have in common? And he came up with some pretty good analytics. But one of the takeaways was to only do what you can honestly claim is best in class, not an also-ran. And I think that in your world, and my world for that matter, it's not about the size of the company. It's not about the revenue. In terms of, we could be bigger if we just started selling more stuff. But would that stuff be best in class? No. And it would start to degrade and our profit margins would start to decline. And then you'll start attracting the wrong customers, toxic customers looking for a bargain. And who will steal the ashtrays, or well, I shouldn't say ashtrays. That's a bad example. Today,
We don't allow
no
smoking, so
smoking,
there's no
no
ashtray.
smoking. Yeah, but they'd steal the furniture or vandalize it, whatever. So I think that quality over quantity is a savvy business move, but it goes against a lot of entrepreneurs' egos because we want to be
Yeah.
bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and we just build it. We grow ourselves out of business because as we get bigger, the problems get bigger. Scaling is super, super expensive,
Yeah.
and there's a difference between growth and scale. A lot of people try and grow, but they don't scale, which means they can't handle the growth. It's like that scene out of A Few Good Men. You can't handle the growth. But so being smaller, have that little golden company that is
Yeah.
easier to manage, that has stellar reputations, that makes you money, obviously. That to me is a goal of a small business owner. Is there's no harm in staying small. Sometimes we make more money smaller than we do larger, right?
Right. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. I know. I totally agree. And, I think it just comes back to the individual, what matters to you as an entrepreneur. So I'm a mother and a wife, and I do want to enjoy my life. Right. And so and Epic BNB, it's a huge part of my life, but it's not my whole life. And, so therefore I need to, I need to find a good balance. And I'd say before 2020, and I don't know if this was like a cultural shift or if this was like a common thing, but just like you were saying, it was all about like everybody in every space, all the podcasts, just grow, 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 like make your millions. It's just like, and I think I don't know if I was brainwashed by it, but like I went to these business leadership conferences and it was like, grow. Yes. Nobody gets into like entrepreneurship to not make money. Like you do want to grow, like you do want to be able to be your own boss, right? Which is not, well, we could talk about that later. It's not like a real thing.
That's a myth. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a myth. Yeah, I actually, it wasn't until COVID, which was like slap me in the face, like all of us, right? Like, oh my God, for most people, where I had to kind of pick up the pieces. I basically I had to lay off my entire team, which I had no idea like was really going to have to happen. And when I actually had to do that was extremely difficult.
So we're talking now the pandemic,
Yeah.
right? And that was going to be my next question. So let me set up the question just so that we can talk a little bit more about it. All entrepreneurs, all business leaders, but particularly entrepreneurs, will face obstacles and challenges, some of which they get through and sometimes they don't. And you kind of started this business at just before the absolute worst time to be in any business or to be in most businesses. I mean, yeah, good timing, right? And we all went through it. My business went through it. Everyone in business at that time went through it, and that was the global pandemic. It hit your business a little harder than others. It didn't hit mine that hard because we were instantly, by the Department of Defense, considered an essential business. They sent us orders to stay open. But in the hospitality industry, in the food and bev industry, all that, I mean, they were just decimated. So how did you get through that time, and how do you think that has prepared you for the challenges that will come along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did not have, I think in 2020, I guess I was about year 5 into business, into starting this business. And I actually have a video of myself on January 1st of 2020. Like, this is gonna be the best year ever, like with my family. And that video came back up. I was like, oh hey, I had no idea. So that was actually the first year that I was actually going to make some profit. So I was actually going to be able to be like, oh my gosh, like we can live off of this as a family because I've just been reinvesting and building a team. What got us through the other side, honestly, is I did have to lay off the team, and I know I was getting there, but I think that what saved us is that my commitment to excellence pretty early on and making sure I took on the right properties and right clients. I didn't learn that right away. When I first started the business, I did take on anybody and anything because I was just learning. I was like, oh, who am I to tell somebody no, right? And so a couple of years in, I was like, okay, there's some problem properties I should take on and properties I should, and probably properties I shouldn't take on based on maybe the client doesn't care about the property or whatnot. So thankfully, when COVID hit, the saving grace is we still had properties that, even though, yes, I mean, it went from it was gonna be the best year to $0. Like literally everything got canceled. It was like, oh my gosh, what I'm gonna do? A couple months or maybe a month or two after that, I was forced to. I wouldn't have any money to pay our employees. Like, we had a little bit of reserve that I was paying them, and I'm like, there's no money in. Like I can't. There's no work. There's literally no work to do because these properties are sitting empty. So at that time, it was me, and there were 40 at that time, probably like 45, 50 properties. And me and Matt, we were working 11-hour days, checking on these properties, going from house to house. Because even if a property is like empty, stuff could happen to it. And there was some crime happening and people breaking it. It was a really, really crazy time.
And to make matters worse, Matt had plenty of time because, he's a road musician and there was no road to go on, right?
We both literally went to $0, and we had just purchased our house in 2018, like the tail end. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to sell everything. We're gonna have to move in with my parent. Just thinking of all the worst case scenarios. Lost my team that I was extremely proud of. But at that time, there were a few team members who really are just so freaking loyal, who stuck by me even when I couldn't pay them. They're like, Steph, we're gonna get through this. They're still with me today. We got through it. It did force me in that time, and I think it forced a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs to really get back to the roots of every part of their business, because like I had to do everything again. I couldn't pay anybody to do anything, but I also had these clients, many who were out of state, were like, hey, you're a property manager. I'm out of state. Like, you're still responsible, right? So it just, it really opened up my eyes to think of the worst case scenario, which I hadn't before. It allowed me to update my contracts. Like, should there be another pandemic, here is a new system we're going to be converting to. This is how we're going to pivot. So definitely learned a ton. I'm actually thankful that it happened, even though there's so many cons, but we came out so much stronger on the other side. I came out a better leader. Very, very humbled by the whole experience, but our systems are really, really great now. And it allowed me to kind of reevaluate on, what does a good team look like? So prior to COVID, I would hire based on my stress level. Like, I'm so stressed, like I need more people. It wasn't really data driven, and I think there has to be a little bit of data, but also a little bit of interpersonal, or just a little personal touch to understanding your business or your business needs, especially when it comes to labor. But so I had too big of a team prior to COVID. That's why I wasn't making money. and then after that, I really learned how to utilize people's strengths, and just became a better leader because of it.
I look back at some of the challenges and adversity that my business had, which were in the moment was absolutely terrible. We went through this big lawsuit, and all these things happen. It's kind of whack-a-mole with problems. Every time we put our head up, boom, another mallet comes down on our head. But today, I look back on it, and just like you, I'm grateful that those things happened, because it made me who I am today. It's kind of a pressure cooker way, to cook the meat, but it's a tenderizer, and it forms you. It chisels the best of you, I think. Even though it's not kind, it's having your teeth pulled without Novocaine. It's just absolutely awful in every way I can describe. But I'm grateful for it today. And it sounds like you're the same way. Now, you had another challenge that came up, and that was, or at least the threat of a challenge, and that was regulatory things. There was a time, and I think that's largely faded. I'm not in your space, so you're aware of more than I am. But as a spectator, I remember all these cities were going through, including the city I live in, and you used to live in, that went as far as to ban short-term rentals. And then they defined what a short-term rental was. And it basically, they might as well have said the Airbnb and Verbo ban, but they called it something else. It did go through in our town, although it's not enforced. that I'm aware of. It's just like, oh yeah, okay, we did that because it was the big
Right.
boogie monster and the boogeyman, and turns out it's not a problem. So unless someone like super complains,
Yeah.
they're not searching for listings. Was Did that come down in your city, or was it just threatened, or what happened?
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. We've gone through a lot of different regulations. It's not fully banned, thankfully, in Nashville, and typically it's not really banned in kind of the major cities where there's hotels. There's thankfully where there are hotels. Usually short-term rentals are accepted because there's like the lobby, like Airbnb lobbyists. They go into those meetings with those departments, but yeah, no, there definitely have been some changes, which have made us have to pivot a little bit. So, for instance, in Nashville, you can't get a non-owner occupied permit in a residential zone. So it's all about zoning. I'm not going to get into the details of that, but yeah, that's definitely a challenge. Um, you know, we have great relationships with our codes department people, the people who issue the permits. And we don't do anything shady. We're not like, hey, we're gonna buy you comp. It's not about that. Honestly, we're just in compliance. And I think that I think the reason why people ban Airbnbs is because there's those bad actors that make the rest of us look like, oh, they're all party houses, they're all poorly managed, and they all don't care about their neighbors. And unfortunately, that is the case, which I understand why those regulations have to come about, because nobody wants to live next to a poorly managed party house. Like, who wants to live next to that day in and day out? So, yeah, I mean, I've definitely shown up to earlier on. I showed up to some, city hall, public hearings, and spoken on behalf of the STR community. And I don't know if it made an impact or not, but thankfully, it's still available here, to be able to operate as short-term rental. There is a town called Brentwood. There's still little pockets that don't allow it. But there's, we have over 12,000 or around 12,000 active short-term rental listings active. There's more than that are kind of, inactive sometimes, but yeah, it's a big market for it.
Yeah. What advice would you give? You've been through the ringer. You had, I think, a disproportionate number of challenges early as opposed to spread out, right? And you survived those. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs in terms of, based on your experience and the trajectory you've been on? What would you tell them? Would you tell them to run? Would you tell them to jump? Would you tell what?
Look, I mean, I don't know. I guess if someone who showed me, hey, these are the challenges you'll be facing in the next 10 years, maybe I might have jumped. Had somebody give me the crystal ball, but I just, it really depends on who you are. If you really want to start, a business and you feel like you have the entrepreneurial spirit, then you just have to not give up. You got to keep going. And it really is, it can be overwhelming when you look at, and here's the deal too. There's the idea people, which there's a lot of idea people that have so many ideas, so many dreams, but they can't execute for shit. Right. And an entrepreneur, especially if you're just starting, because typically you don't have all these funds to just, let's just build this business, right? A lot of the times you're doing a lot of these things yourself. You got to hone in the ideas and also be able to execute, or else you're just never going to get anywhere. So I think that if you have all these big ideas, you got to make them tangible and just have one step at a time and knock out that step. I think brainstorming is a great thing. I brainstorm every once in a while. But if all you do is brainstorm and have all these ideas, you're never going to get anywhere. So it's really about, okay, let's do this brainstorming cluster. What are the first tangible things I can knock out, and just doing it. I've said this before, is just scheduling it out on your calendar, really carving out that time, protecting your time. I'm really huge about protecting your time. This is for myself and for everybody on my team. It's like, this is what you have to do. You're responsible for this. So do protect your time. Put on do not disturb mode. Save the personal text for later, like you're working, right? And it's not like this rule that I have is you can't accept text.
But
it's just
priorities.
if you want to be successful in anything that you're doing, you gotta do what you're supposed to do, and typically that requires protecting your time. So I would just say to a new entrepreneur, go for it. Don't give up. That's the big one. It's a lot of people give up because it's just like, oh, I just can't do this. But it's the reason why I can't do it is because you're not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah,
do the thing and move on. Like, do the one process, move on to the second one. And eventually you're going to have this whole playbook of processes and procedures. And then you have this amazing business.
that is great advice. Don't give up. You got, pounded with the whack-a-mole mallet, many times with COVID, with regulations, with,
a lot of things,
countless number of things. How do you, where do you get your resilience? Because I'm a young entrepreneur, asking you questions, and you say, just don't give up.
Yeah.
Tell me how you don't give up. Most people will give up. They have a tolerance for a certain amount of pain, and then that's it. Uncle. Entrepreneurs are a little different. We tend to have this very high tolerance for pain, and so where do you find your resilience and stamina for business comes from?
Yeah, I think first that comes with experience. So experience of just getting beat up all the time, right? And like experience in putting yourself in situations where you think you are literally going to fail, like it's just never gonna turn around, and then it does turn around. So I think going through that a few times, like, okay, now I'm at a point where I know we can get through anything, and I've set up systems and processes to obviously like liabilities and all that type of thing. But I'd say probably for the first new entrepreneur, like some of the common things that scare people is like insurance and all the little carrots that like, big corporations dangle in front of people that keep them from starting their own business. Like, you'll get your insurance, you'll get your vacation time. There are resources out there that a lot of people don't know about that you'll be able to find a way to pay for your insurance. You'll be able to find a way for your needs. And if you have the entrepreneurial spirit, like have a couple side hustles before you get to the big business. So I think if you're just creative enough, like you'll find a way to not starve, to make money. If you have to Uber, right? If you have to go on, there's this amazing website called Upwork.com, and you could just upload. There's so many little side hustles, and if you're a good side hustler, you'll be a good entrepreneur because you'll find ways to make money. You'll find ways to build. But yeah, I mean, where I got my resilience, it just comes with experience, and I don't really know what a good answer is for that. It's like you just have to kind of go through it and just.
I think you saw a lot of resilience in your parents, right?
Yeah.
That probably, for me anyway, I saw the resilience of my parents. So I saw it was possible, against all odds, but possible. And I think I don't want to answer for you, but I'm guessing that your exposure to the challenges your parents faced, coming to a new land, not speaking the language, finding jobs, building a family, and living the quote unquote American dream. You saw a lot of challenges overcome, and that probably just planted a seed, and an example that
100%.
These things don't kill you. They may feel like you're dead, but you're not dead.
And here's the deal: they come from a culture and a time as well where. My parents, like being raised like in the Catholic Church by the priests and the nuns, it was a rough time. And not everybody my parents' age or your age, right, have people that were maybe they weren't immigrants in America in the United States. It was actually pretty great. It was pretty easy. It was, they didn't really have very many hardships. So because my parents experienced that, and you're right, now we're going way back now, which is really, I guess, where I got my resilience is the way that they raised me. And they were amazing parents, and they gave me such an amazing childhood. I have nothing to complain about. But because of their experience, I was not coddled with my feelings or, my breakups with my boyfriends. Like, just get up, And back when I was younger, I'm like, I wish my parents would just coddle me more. Like, essentially, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't, because they were always like, hey, we love you. It's going to be fine. Just get back up and just keep going. And that was always the message. Just like, you got this. Like, believe in yourself. Or my parents were also. My parents and my dad was always like, I trust you. I trust you to make the decision. And I think because of his trust in me, even though he knew sometimes that I was going to fail with whatever decision I was going to make when I was younger, it allowed me to make my own mistakes and to learn from them. And that's something that I really appreciate.
Well, that's great for people who are getting into this, to either your industry or any industry for that matter, to hear. I think that's really good advice and a good experience to share. Two more questions as we're running out of time. Looking ahead, without giving away any trade secrets, what's next for either Epic BNB or
Yeah.
just the short-term rental management business in general? Where do you see the
Yeah.
business going or the industry going over the next few years?
Yeah. We'll talk first on the business and then I'll talk on the industry or maybe vice versa. Let's talk about the industry.
Okay.
And because that's going to drive to where we're going is I actually got in at a great time. You're like, oh, you got in not at a great time right before COVID. It actually was a great time because it was booming before COVID. And because of because there was less competition, right? So these properties, I mean, we were able to, have lower occupancy, but like really killer rates, that's like the best case scenario because less wear and tear on your property and then you're
Sure.
making a killing, right? And then COVID came, the economy, we had the stimulus come in with, we had like the PPP loans. So that really just infused our economy in a not natural way. But we had an amazing boom post-COVID, like 2.5 years afterwards, which was not natural. So if any economist will tell you like that, for any business, you'll see that it was, 2018, 2019, steady growth, obviously down in 2020, and then 2021. It's like the sharp, like unnatural from 2019.
Yeah, it was basically economic steroids, right?
Exactly.
Fake
100%.
muscle build, but
yes,
muscle build nonetheless.
Correct. So because of that, people were buying, they had all this money and they were buying, properties in 2022, tail end of 2021, 2022. A lot of people were buying short-term rentals at top dollar, like over $1 million here in Nashville, taking huge risks, not cash, $8,000 mortgage or whatever. And now that we're kind of rebalancing, our market is really picking up for where we left off in 2019, which is normal. That's really what should be happening. But our supply is way up, and it's not just our market; it's nationally, it's everywhere. And so obviously with that comes more competition. But I'm seeing that it is going to stabilize because some people are forced to get out because they're not making the cash flow that they thought they were going to make when they made that $1.2 million investment with only 15% down or whatever it was. So they're forced to go out, which is sad, which is really, really sucks. Typically people got in that scenario because they were misguided. I didn't misguide those people, but potentially they're realtors, or maybe they just didn't understand that was super risky. But yeah, I think it's going to stabilize. I think just like any industry, the pendulum swings, especially when there's too much supply, less demand. Some people are going to be kicked out, unfortunately. And the people I think that have sustainable businesses, well, I don't know how sustainable my business is. All I know is that we really have an emphasis on quality. Therefore, this year, now this goes to Epic, we're getting a lot of business this year that I've never seen this much interest in working with Epic BNB at this volume. And so therefore we're hiring our team, expanding our team. And 2025 is set to be, and knock on wood, because I said this about 2020, but 2025, I have, so many properties and clients lined up, which is a great problem to have, but we're having to kind of, okay, let's scale this, right? It's like, It's the next step in growth. How do we do this without losing quality? So right now, I'm literally right now, and this week and these last 2 weeks, just entrepreneurs, you're going to go through these moments where things are going really good and really smooth. Enjoy those times because they don't last very long, right? Like, Mike. And when those times are smooth, like, okay, let's just enjoy this because now
the calm before the storm.
The calm before the storm. So right now, I cannot turn my brain off. I'm just constantly just like, oh my gosh, we've got to, I'm just thinking about systems. And then so there's this, I'm having sleepless nights right now. But so where this puts Epic, I had opportunities to expand into different markets. That's not a huge goal for me right now because I really got to focus on Nashville because these are where my clients are. I got to take care of them, make sure that we maintain quality. But what we are doing is I am partnering with a long-term property manager, and we're going to start offering long-term property management services for maybe some of our clients who are going to need to pivot because of where the market's at. So that's exciting to bring that in-house. And, getting in, I am a real estate agent. I have my license. I don't buy and sell because I'm running this business, but that's something that we're going to be offering in-house as well pretty soon. And then potential, this is what expansion looks like for me in other markets is I really want to partner with other real estate professionals who maybe are doing long-term management, but they want to do short-term rental management. And I would partner with them to basically fast forward their learning and like they can integrate into our systems, but they would still, own that market. That's kind of where my head's at with that. But yeah, that's just kind of the future. But all my growth from 2015 till 2025, it's all been organic. I've never pushed it. Thankfully, I've never had to I haven't really had to pay for marketing. I mean, I did some social media marketing here and there, but everything has just been like by referral based on our work. And I'm really, really proud of that.
Yeah. We could have a whole nother episode on the subject of marketing.
Yes.
I think traditional marketing, the way it used to be, is dead. And your generation killed it, by the way. Thank you, Stephanie.
But yeah.
Well, not you personally, but your generation, if in a good way, it needed to die. It was braggadocious. It was, just noise. And there was no differentiation between one brand and another because, it's just who's running the loudest Super Bowl commercial.
Right.
But your generation does not rely on ads. They have, your generation has a filter in their brain that doesn't even see ads, right? And your generation, I believe, seeks information. And they seek it from influencers. And I don't mean that in a Kim Kardashian way. I'm talking about subject matter experts that have channels that, talk about best practices, things like that. I believe the current generation seeks the knowledge and then applies it as opposed to reading magazine ads or watching television and seeing an ad. Those don't get in. They are knowledge seekers. We complain whenever you start a sentence with kids these days. You've become your grandfather, right? So that will happen to you. I'll warn you.
I already have.
Yeah, you're there.
Oh my gosh, I'm not even old. Yeah.
Yeah. So kids these days, it's easy for my generation and probably even yours to complain that their faces are always in screens, which may be true, but it's not all TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat. You name it. A lot of it is. They're online. They're Googling things. They're learning, and they're carrying around the world history in their back pocket.
Right.
So I think that's changing the way marketing goes. And I'm not surprised you don't need to run ads because referrals are your ads. The way you present to each client is an ad because And I also believe on that subject that young people today don't buy products. They join tribes. And Apple is a tribe. Patagonia is a tribe. Nike is a tribe. And not only do they join the tribe, they'll wear your merch, and they will you can do affiliate marketing. You can give them affiliate codes and they make money just cheerleading for you. Well, that never happened in the past. It would be very, very rare. So I think the way you're doing it is wise. And I think if you were trying to advertise, the right people aren't listening anyway.
Exactly. And you have to have again, what I talked about the idea people and the execution people. And you have to have a little grasp on reality. And we are just a management company. We're a short-term rental management company. We're at Epic BNB is the name. I think it's a great name. I actually acquired Epic BNB. I used to be Nashville Airbnb guide, and I had this opportunity. Someone was like, "Hey, somebody I knew was like, somebody's selling their business here in town, Epic BNB. They started it and they want out. There's only 3 properties left. I didn't have. It was for $13,000. I didn't have $13,000 laying around back in 2017 when this happened. So I talked to the owners. I was like, "Hey, I'll manage your 3 properties for free for 3 months, which will be about $13 in commission. And then can I have it?" And they're like, "Sure." So that's how that happened with Epic BNB, by the way. But going back to the name Epic BNB, we did a little bit of marketing, but people want to be a part of a tribe, but they also, with all the scams and frauds these days, as far as internet stuff, they don't want to book direct with Epic BNB. Maybe one day, right when we get more brand recognition, but they want to book on Airbnb. They want to book on VRBO. So we did try getting ads to get guests to book directly. And that's just not realistic right now. We tried,
Right.
trust me. I even hired like a consultant to be like, hey, how do we get more direct bookings so we can own our business more instead of building our business on somebody else's island, such as Airbnb?
Yeah.
Because with that comes some inherent risks, right? But that's just not realistic. So I'm not going to spend all those marketing dollars. I tried it. I tested it out.
Right.
And then really when it comes to the management side, it's a little bit niche because not everybody owns an Airbnb and needs somebody to run it, So, yeah, you just have to just be realistic on where your marketing dollars, if it's going to, have any type of return on investment, and test it out. And if it doesn't, then just be done,
Yeah, I agree. I think you'd be spending tons of money unsuccessfully trying to get people away from a very established brand just for the purpose of controlling the market, controlling your market. And as regulations change and payment processing systems change and the tech behind the sophistication of the website, changes.
AI.
You don't, in AI, you don't need to deal with that. You do what you do best, which is managing other people's properties. So that makes perfect sense. The last question, because we are totally out of time, is so you started this business in, was it 17? Is that when did you
20?
start?
I really started
in the
2014.
industry.
Yeah,
14,
in the industry,
okay.
2014. Yeah,
Okay.
2014.
So we have 11 years that you've been doing this. So I'm going to ask you an 11-year question. 11 years ago, how did you define success, and how do you define it today?
Yeah. 11 years ago, success to me was I need money. I need money to be able to live, right? Like, and that's a very valid, success measure.
Very practical.
100%.
Yeah.
Practical for sure. But that was before I also had a family and kids. So now success to me is time and being able to leave work at work and show up for my family and just be mentally present and I could be physically present, but for a time there, I wasn't mentally present because I was thinking, so success to me is being able to feed my family and for my kids to be like, wow, mom was around, mom and dad were around growing up and they were there for me. So, that's how I define it today. And
That's
if
awesome.
I can make some extra money while I'm doing it, if there's a little extra here and there, amazing. Like that is such a gift and I'm extremely, extremely thankful. But you can give me $1 million today. But if I had to travel all the time, be away from my family and not see my kids grow up, I would not take it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So far, this is episode number 16. The 15 guests I've had on before you had different answers in terms of how they define success at the beginning and how they define it today. They were very different answers, which is good. I would worry if, first of all, almost everyone defines success the early days as some monetary means, right? Some monetary value, which is totally understandable because we have everything but that at that point. And I would worry if someone said, how did you define success before? Money. How do you define it today? Money. That would worry me. I'm like, oh my God, that's like a sociopath type thing. Everyone has come up with everything from freedom, which is kind of what you're saying too, to family. Family always comes up. I think you're 16 of 16 that somehow reference their success definition to do with family, which is great. Well, Steph, Utterback, Epic Airbnb, thank you for your generosity and your time. It's great to catch up. I'm sorry I'm not there in Nashville. We were there a few years ago, as you know, when my wife, Debbie, had her 60th birthday, and I kind of fell in love with that city. I've been going there for many years on business.
You guys got to come back out. You guys got to come back out.
Yes, we have to come back out. Yes, and I know who. I'll ask you for a property recommendation. Yeah. Yes, that's right. There you go. Yes. I feel I have friends in high places now. For my listeners and viewers, if you're watching this on YouTube and you'd like to get more information on Epic Airbnb, look down here where it says show more, and there'll be a link to Epic Airbnb, Epic BNB.
Epic BNB.
Yes, let's not put the A in. Someone else owns the A, right? So Epic BNB. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, when it's safe to do so, when you get to your destination or get off the treadmill or Lord knows whatever you're doing, look at the podcast app and look at the show notes there, and you'll find a direct link to Epic BNB. Stephanie, it's great to see you again. Say hi to the
see you.
family and
I will.
keep moving. Stay unstoppable. I don't think anything can stop you. You've always been very unstoppable, and that's a great thing.
Hard-headed.
That too. I'm trying to be nice, and hard-headed. Yeah, we all are hard-headed, stubborn, all those attributes. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Mike. I'll talk to you soon.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. A very special thanks to Stephanie Utterback for being my guest on the show. The Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast is available on all major podcast sites and on the Reluctant Entrepreneur YouTube channel. We've been recording future episodes with fascinating guests, which I'm excited to share with you. So don't miss out. Subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes are released. We release episodes twice a month on the first and third Tuesday. If you're an entrepreneur or know of an entrepreneur who would like to be a guest on my show, please let me know. Visit mikeconrad.com/podcast and apply to be a guest. Just remember, that's Conrad spelled with a K. If you'd like to reach out to me, my email address is mike@mikeconrad.com. Once again, Conrad with a K. If you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup, From Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available as a paperback and a Kindle version, both available on Amazon, and as an audiobook, available on Audible and Amazon. So much for the shameless plug. Thanks again for listening or watching. Until I see you again, be unstoppable.